It's one of the companies I invested in, I said, was Tax Partners. We had a very successful exit with that deal. Well, the two guys that came to me, one was Robert Dumas and another guy was Mike Sanders. They were partners. They had worked in a company that was doing this type of service, this what was sales tax preparation for telecom companies. They worked for a company somewhere else. And they said, we couldn't work with that particular guy. We have a better idea. We think that we could build a better company. Well, Robert Dumas was he was with one of the big four. He specialized in sales tax. He specialized in telecom. He ran the service for Bell South, went into this other company, and then I picked him up. In fact, one of the questions I asked him, I don't know if you guys know anything about sales tax, but it's like a 4-line return. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Very simple. I said to him, I remember we went through the whole thing, and I said, there's a real business here. But I said to him, my question to him was, tell me again, you guys really love sales tax? They said, yeah, man, it's like our life. It's our life. And I'm like, okay. And it was, and it's still to this day is their life. They still love sales tax. Robert was the CPA. He was the category expert. Mike was an expert in building IT automated systems for sales tax. That business was profitable within 6 months and never looked back. It was incredible business, incredible business. The other, so that's an example of where did they get the idea. And the difference is they know the need. There's a knowing of the need versus perceiving the need. You've been in situations like you've been involved with new businesses. You hear somebody and maybe a friend of yours is complaining about something they're doing or complaining about some marketing approach in their business, and you give them your best advice. But you're not in their industry. So you're giving advice at 20,000 feet. And this person's problem is at ground level. Well, your advice is pretty good, but it's not pertinent. So I'm looking for ground level understanding of the market need, because that means that it's real. I once had a guy that worked for me. Well, he didn't work for me. He actually started a company. We sold it, and then he was thinking he was going to go with somebody else at some point. And this was during the dot-com boom. And there was this young guy who was 22 years old, and he's raised $7 million for this company. And he's talking about, and back then, man, people were just throwing money at people. It was incredible. You have an idea, boom, you were instantly funded. $7 million, 22 years old, and he's waving his arms, and he's going, let me tell you how big this is going to be, how many users. We're going to have millions of users on this. And this guy, who at the time was about 42, he says, man, I hear you. I think it is going to be a great company, but I got one question. Just tell me how you're going to sell the first one. Stop the guy in his tracks. His answer was, he's kind of stopped him like this, and then the guy said to him, you just don't get it, do you? And that was the end of that conversation. Well, that guy wound up, this is a true story, that guy wound up going out of business, obviously, during the boom, during the bust, okay? And then I read about him in the Atlanta Business Chronicle on page 3. I don't know if anybody gets the ABC. In page 3, they always talk about a little technology blurb or an interest. And it showed a picture of this guy. It blew me away. And they said, so what are you going to do? And he said he's going to join the Peace Corps. And I'm reading this thing, Peace Corps. Where'd the Peace Corps come from? He says, well, when I got out of college, I always wanted to join the Peace Corps, but everybody else was starting businesses, so I figured, oh, what the heck? If you can get money, I'll start a business. Well, that didn't work out, so I'm going to go to the Peace Corps. That goes back to destiny. That guy blew $7 million of somebody's money, and then he went into the Peace Corps. He should have just gone into the Peace Corps and asked for contributions. He could have probably done better. Okay? The other thing around that whole thing is knowing this is something, this is a little bit of a sideline, but if you really know what you're selling to whom, then you'll be successful. One of the other questions I ask, you need to know if you're thinking about starting a business, you're going to hire your first salesman, and he's going to walk in the door, he's going to ask you only 2 questions. He's going to say, man, this sounds really cool, I got the vision, I'm all over it. Okay, so who do I call and what do I say? That is your business plan. Who do I call and what do I say? And if you can't answer those two questions, you don't have a business. And that's what's most important. So the person needs to know the business as we go along. So the last piece is this is the fourth piece of the evaluating economic opportunity is, does the product address a strategic need or a compliance need? It has to be one of those two things. So is it strategic? Is it important to the business? That's what I want to do. I want to be able to call somebody up and not say, we really don't care about that. Maybe it's I don't know what it is, but I'm looking for a strategic need being filled. The other side is compliance need. Those are beautiful businesses. So the government tells you you have to file this form. If you're in the insurance business, you have forms you have to file with the feds, banking, all that. Great businesses. I was in the tax return, the 1040 business for a while. Made a lot of money in the 1040 business because every one of us has to file a tax return. So it's a great business to be in. And that's now commoditized, as we know. So there you go. So those are really the four criteria that I use from the economic opportunities. So the recap of that would be, it has to be business to business for me. It has to be culturally consistent. In other words, the way it works now. The entrepreneur must know the market, and it must be a strategic product or service. So those are the two things. So now you have how do I evaluate entrepreneurs and how do I evaluate the economic opportunity. Any questions around any of this? We can take a break. Yeah. That's a good question. Am I looking to a particular industry or field that I'll invest in? Yeah, mine is mostly is in information technology, in products or services. Okay, I've now moved to what I'll call in Tourette engineering. I moved to real technology, which is engineering in effect. Okay, and that we're actually building a hard product like a compressor and engine. Okay, so there's real science around it and a lot of patents surrounding it. That's a good question to ask as you're going around. One of the things I did just recently is I went to Silicon Valley to ask advice on this Tourette engineering project that I'm in. So I went to several VCs, and I saw a lot of guys just sort of not able, these are very smart people, but they weren't able to give me advice except at 50,000 feet. Why? It's not their area of expertise. So we invest in what we know. That's what it's about. So I've got to get my short list down and qualify the next guy that I call to make sure I'm talking to somebody who really understands this field, and they could be very, very important to me. Yes, sir. So what range of dollars would I put into an investment? When I started out, it was in the $300,000 range. This would have been in the early 90s. And over time, it's moved up. And so now it's my maximum investment would be $1 million in a venture.
Okay, and one other question, follow-up question on that. What type of return do you usually look for in the range?
The type of return that I look for is I would say it's at least a 30-time return on my money. Wow. Remember, I'm getting in at the napkin stage.
Okay, over what period of time?
Over probably right now, a 7 to 10 year period.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, one follow-up question to that. To get an idea of your risk appetite, how do you invest in the markets out there? NASDAQ? Do
I invest in the public markets? No. What I've done is, yes, I do. In that, what I've done is I have a balanced portfolio approach with the majority of my assets, and I give those to a money manager. Okay, and we set goals together, and then he manages all that. And then what I do is I take off a piece of that portfolio, which I'll call my risk portion, and that's what I manage. I have built all my net worth on this risk portion and not on the balanced portfolio approach, whose goal is preservation. Okay?
Now could that be a little bit different if it's like Sig Mosley runs the money for John Imlay? So I assume John Imlay has done the same thing, where he's taken a part of his wealth and put it in, let's say, a preservation of capital, and SIG invests the rest in the risk capital in that.
Right. So how did Imlay Investments do it with Sig Mosley is the question. And when John started, he probably, I think he had just sold MSA to Dun & Bradstreet Software. That would have been 89, I think it was. And he wound up with, I think he probably had a net worth of somewhere about $50 million. He took $4 million of that and gave it to SIG as risk capital. And that's what started Imlay Investments. Okay? The rest of it, SIG does manage, but he manages it through money managers. He's not really investing himself. Okay?
Did Ivester do something similar?
Did Doug Ivester do something similar? I don't know Doug Ivester, so I can't tell you that one. I'm friends with SIG and John Imlay. Yeah. The first one is, where do I get my deal flow? And the second one would be, is if we have businesses that we're interested in starting that are outside of your interest group, your sector, industry sector, where do we go to find those investors? On the first one is the deal flow is interesting in that if you have money to invest and you sort of make yourself known that you do this, deals find you. Okay? Deals find you. I was at Kleiner Perkins last week, okay, which we'll say is the premier worldwide venture capital firm. And I'm sitting there, I got an 11:30 meeting with somebody. And I'm in the lobby, and this is, I mean, it really is. It's like walking into the Vatican, okay, when you walk in there, you know, it has that kind of feel. This is it. Sand Hill Road, bam, Kleiner Perkins. Well, all of a sudden I saw this guy putting out all this food. And what they do is all the venture capitalists in the valleys, they cater in lunch every single day. And I'm not talking like cater in lunch. I'm talking the lunch that was at Kleiner Perkins. I've had dinner parties, and I've catered them. I wouldn't put that much money in the catering, okay? And these are two best friends of mine, the people I want to even impress. First class. Now, the point of my making there is they're sitting on billions of dollars to invest. They're not going out for lunch. There's not a lot of networking going on. You know, as I was walking out the building, 5 people were walking into the building, okay? And I'm sure that there's a parade into Kleiner Perkins all day long. You know, people looking. So their deal flow, where do you get it? It just comes to them at this point. There's not a lot of looking that needs to be done. And so that's the business in that regard. Sig Mosley of Imlay Investment, who's been in, I think, what did he say, 60 deals or so? Yeah, he's not looking around for deals. They find Sig. It was that easy. The other side is, so it's a matter of what's important is to get the right deal flow coming your way. So I think it's important as an angel investor is to put out your criteria so you don't get, you know, everything. So I'm not getting somebody who's in healthcare or who's looking to do a franchise dry cleaning store, or, you know, there's a lot of different opportunities. Now, as far as the second question, which is to say, I'm in the healthcare sector, you're not, who is? How do I find those people? And what I would recommend there is to either go to somebody like me who's a high-profile angel who might be able to put you in touch, or to, if you're running in that sector and you're running in it for a while with a new company, you're going to be talking to people in that sector who know the people who are the investors in the sector, okay? So what you'll find in any vertical market, I don't care if it's in Atlanta or if it's in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, these are very small networks. And so if you've got a company and and you start talking to healthcare people, they're going to go, and it's good, they're going to be very anxious to turn that deal over to people who would fund it for you. Okay? Yeah, I made the comment that if you fit in the process, that you're probably not an entrepreneur. And I think what I'm saying there is that, and I'm not saying that people that are in corporations could never become entrepreneurs. Okay, I'm not saying that. But I will say this, that if they're very comfortable in the corporate environment, they're most for a period of time, and it could be just as little as 3 years, I don't think they're entrepreneurs. There's this sort of being in that process and having those types of constraints of this is the way we do it, with very slow sort of movement to change or improvement, usually drives an entrepreneur absolutely crazy. Because it just seems stupid. Why are we doing this? And so they get this anxiousness then of, if they stay in that environment, I think it leads to depression. Because they're working counter to who they are, heart of hearts. You know, I think there's a lot of depression, by the way, because of that. I think we're not, again, that Shakespearean line of to thine own self be true. You need to constantly ask yourself that as you go through life. Who are you, and are you in the right place for who you are? All right? Anything else? So let me just end with this then, if there's no questions. So you should be asking, so how do you get Charlie to write a check?
That was my question.
That was your question. Okay, good. I have to get to a point, you know, in this conversations with the entrepreneur. Now, we got people and economic opportunity. Two things have to hit for me. The first is I have to, as I said earlier, I have to trust the entrepreneur, his calling and his vision. And I have to see in these few meetings that I have, I'm making a decision to get married in sometimes one meeting, I've done that, sometimes 3 meetings, but no more than that. If it's more than that, then I'm thinking about it too long and it's not right. So I sort of walk away. So very quickly I'm there. So what I'm looking for really is, does the person walk the talk? Does the person walk the talk? So is this something you've been working on, this healthcare idea, for the last 60 days? Or is it something you've been working on for the last 18 months? And that you've made sacrifices as you've worked on that? Well, that says, this idea owns you. If it's 60 days, it's a trial period. And I don't invest in trial periods. I invest in ideas that own entrepreneurs. I've written a blog on that that says you can't separate the entrepreneur from the company. They're the same person. If you say something bad about the entrepreneur's company, he takes it personally. And you just can't separate the two. So that's what I look for. So the first one, does the person walk the talk? And the second, on the economic opportunity, am I personally captured by the product and service and understand how it's going to make money? You've heard ideas that you go, oh, that's a cool idea. And you walk away and you go, how will they ever make money with that idea? Well, unless you can show you're making money, you can't build value. Value is based on a multiple of cash flow. I think you studied something probably about that. All right? So eventually, you've got to have positive cash flow to create value. And so you've got to be able to see that. And then the question, this goes to the man in the back of the room that asked, you know, about the culturally inconsistent, is the question then I have to say on the economic opportunity, can I muster the resources to get it to positive cash flow? See, it might be a Facebook idea, but it's going to take $1 billion of investment to get it to positive cash flow. Well, it's not going to be me. That's got to be somebody else. Oh, it's $500,000 to get it to consistent positive cash flow. I like to talk to that guy. I could see that. Okay? So that's what it's about. So it has to be sized right. So does he walk the talk, and I understand how it makes money, and I can get it there with my resources or the resources of me and my friends. So I stick to this formula when I do my evaluating, you know, and it's a formula that you use for love, and you should use it for startups. Women use this formula more than men. And that is, you know, that what you do is we know that we buy with the heart, but we justify with the head. All right? And I get in the same way in startups. I buy with the heart. I mean, I have to guard myself, but I can have a tendency to fall in love with entrepreneurs. I did back when I was 23 when I met Richard Brock, and I still do it today. But then I have to be careful that I justify it with my head so that I don't get into a bad deal with a good guy. Because you can't win on those deals. So that's what I do. So people first, deal second. Thanks.